Welcome to the Grace Story Podcast, where we introduce you to interesting people and their inspiring stories. From Grace professors, current students, and distinguished alumni to special guests and speakers on our campus, you can meet new people and hear how they are impacting the world around them. This podcast is recorded and produced at Grace College and Seminary, located on the shores of Winona Lake in the great state of Indiana. This is the Grace Story Podcast. Today's guest is Tonya Fawcett, the Director of Library Services here at Grace. Tonya is married to Dr. Jeff Fawcett, Dean of the School of Business, mother to 4 children, grandmother to 7. She received her BA in English from Cedarville College and her Master of Library Science at the University of Maryland. And she's passionate about information literacy, and I think we'll learn today she has some thoughts about AI as well. But first, I have to ask you a really important question. If you think back over your career and the 2 libraries that you've worked at on college campuses, do you think of anyone that was a particularly outstanding student worker in the library that you had at some point in your past?
Every student worker is wonderful, right? We couldn't do our jobs without them. But there was a young man who would get up very, very early in the morning and go all across campus to make sure the technology was working and ready for the faculty, because at that time the library was responsible for all the tech in the classroom. And that young man was a Drew Flam.
That's right. I used to work in the library back at Cedarville, where you were for many years, and I was a student. And so I got my understanding of tech and library from getting up very early to go make sure all the computers in the classroom work. So, speaking of your story, where did you grow up, and then how did library become a part of your story of like, hey, this is a career that I want to pursue?
Okay. Well, I'm actually an Indiana gal. Didn't live here long as an infant, but I was born in East Chicago, and then my parents moved to Grand Rapids soon after I was born. And another part of my story is my dad and my brother are both engineers. So I grew up in an engineering family, so I thought I might go that direction. But in high school, I had a work-study job, and they gave it to me, and several months later, they canceled that. But they felt obligated to find a job for me because they had kind of contracted with me. So they put me in the library. Okay. So I was working in the high school library, and I really enjoyed it, and worked with some wonderful ladies. It was just a neat opportunity to impact even high school students. And they even gave me lots of responsibilities for a high school kid, which is amazing today. So went off to college, was undeclared, started off as a science major, took those biology classes and chemistry, and it was okay, but I started thinking about my life at the time I was dating my husband, Jeff, and, can a mom be an engineer? And at that time it was kind of a non-traditional direction for women. And I knew I wanted to stay home with my kids, at least at some point, like my mother had. And met with my advisor, Dr. Johnson, at the time, took care of all the undeclareds. And he said, look around, don't panic. And I said, I'm thinking that I really enjoyed this job as a high school student. And he said, well, why don't you go talk to Mr. Lynn Brock, director of the libraries? So I went over and talked to him. What does a librarian do, right? Check out books, right? That's all they do. And even with my little experience in the high school, I figured it wasn't a big deal. And he was very patient with me, told me it didn't matter what my undergrad was. You just needed a master's degree, so you had to get that master's degree. So, and then pretty much on the spot, I don't know if it was that time or shortly after, he said, would you like a job in the library? So I went from working in Chuck's, which is a cafeteria, and wearing a hairnet and a lovely smock, to working in the library and helping students, and worked with some wonderful adult staff and other students, and got my feet wet there at the college library. But I knew right then I needed to get my degree, my master's degree. So it didn't matter what my undergrad was. So I went ahead and got an English degree. Could sit around and read books, right?
Right.
How hard is that? It wasn't easy, but I made it through. And then we went off to Maryland after we got married. And I started at the University of Maryland a year after my undergrad. And God provided a job there in Maryland. I worked for the ECAC library, which was the Electromagnetic Compatibility Analysis Center.
Okay.
I learned to spell that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was tech services, and they paid for my degree. So I tell students, get a job in a library. Oftentimes they'll pay for your degrees. So worked at night, getting my degree, and then soon after we got Jeff and I were both working on our masters. He at the University of Baltimore, me at the University of Maryland. Soon after that, Cedarville called Jeff, said, "Why don't you come on back?" And then I started working part-time at the Cedarville Library because at that time we had one child and then two more and then another. And so I worked in the evenings. I called it my time with the adults after spending all day with the kids. So college students were adults back then, right? And it was a wonderful opportunity to work with students, work with wonderful people, and learn and grow.
And then you came here to Grace and started soon after you arrived as the director. Yeah,
well, actually, Jeff had got an offer and came to Grace, and our house hadn't sold, and I didn't have a job. So I stayed in Ohio for about 6 weeks. It's like, well, get a job or, sell the farm, And Mr. Bill Darr had retired, and this job became open, and put my application materials in and had a wonderful interview, and they accepted me. And so we packed up a couple of suitcases, and we lived at Dewart Lake at a cottage with some friends owned. Lived there for a little while until we could get a house here in Winona Lake. So it's been a God path, and it's really been fun to be on. And I've really enjoyed it. And when I came to Grace, walked in and immediately embraced by the staff. I have to give a shout out to Rhoda. She had also applied for the position, and I don't know how she felt, but I would think that would be a little hard. And she literally embraced me. I walked in the first day, and she said, "Okay, Tonya, you've got a meeting in Indy and Pawnee next week. I've ordered your lunch. You will meet these two ladies at Marsh, and they'll take you down." And I'm thinking, what's a Marsh? But we would carpool. We continue to carpool with librarians from AMBS and Goshen. Sometimes we had Bethel or St. Mary's. So we carpool down to our meetings in Indy. And working with Rhoda was a delight. All the staff in the library, but Rhoda and I got to do wild things, from arranging the floors and taking care of all of making the facilities work well for our 21st century students, to doing presentations. And I think the staff, in my experience here, their first response has always been yes, not why, which scares me because I don't always have the best ideas. But I get a lot of great ideas from other libraries.
Sure.
And if it worked at another place, let's give it a try here. And I have a staff of yes, and how can we do that?
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about how being a librarian, how libraries have changed since sort of you started into this field and what it looks like now.
Okay. I'm starting to feel old because when I started library school and my first jobs were actually typing catalog cards. And, you had a library card for the initial book, and then you'd have a subject cards, but you only had 2 or 3 subjects, right? So you had to think, what are the most significant things about this book?
Put them in those
love drawers. Yes,
those are like antiques now, right?
They
are. I mean, people
yeah.
really want those. Yeah.
Well, and we get a lot of comments when tours come through the library. Before I arrived, they took some of the old catalog cards and made them into end tables.
Oh,
so
fun.
we still have them around. So students don't know what they are, but like you said, jewelry boxes, right? Or tool boxes.
Yeah, toolbox. Yeah, it has plenty of uses beyond the Dewey Decimal System.
Beyond the Dewey Decimal System. So, and it was even before my time. I think about the libraries were about the book, right? So ancient times, they would lock up the books. Books were very precious, and you went to the library and you would read the book. But the book the library was the place to find a book. You didn't have bookshelves in your homes, so you had to go to get the book. And then we moved into the library was so that was about the reader, right? They had to read, you had to go. Then it became about the book. We've all built these warehouses of books, and more shelves, and just pack the building full of books.
You used to brag about how many books do you have in your library, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and and the biggest libraries had the biggest number of books, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the most important thing. And if you think about even maybe when you went to school, I mean, that was it, just shelves and shelves, and maybe there would be a desk in the corner here and there.
It's like the place you go to get knowledge.
Right, yeah. And it was about the book. Journals were important, but journals and books, the print word.
Yeah.
So, and I remember when the internet came and the Gopher, right, from Minnesota, and before World Wide Web, I mean, we would use it that we could access things, and it's like, okay, well, we would try to organize the libraries. We're trying to organize the web, and so we're all about organizing things, right? You can't just let it lay there. You have to organize it. But so it was about, and again, there's the laws of libraryship. It is finding the reader, finding the book, but it was a very physical place, physical resources. So. And today, when you bring in the internet, all of a sudden it is the physical read. You still need the books, but now the books are offered in different formats. Maybe they're streaming audio books, right, or ebooks. There's information, obviously, everybody knows about searching Google. I just heard yesterday, and I need to investigate, so it's just something I heard for the first time from another librarian, that students are not doing research on Google anymore. They're now doing their research on TikTok.
Oh, wow. That's a new level.
That's a new level. That scares me a bit, so finding out what that means. So, we've had to grow. Librarians are all about discovery, and I think I have been that way. Mm-hmm. It's like, what's the new thing? I was able to, bring up an app early on when I was at Cedarville. We contracted with a company and made an app for the library. So it's all about change and moving, constant change. And if you're not comfortable with change, this is the wrong field.
And I think you said once to me that the physical space of a library, it used to be the library was for the book. Mm-hmm. And now the library is for the learner.
Exactly.
And so when you think about the Grace Library, mm-hmm. from when you came mm-hmm. to now, mm-hmm. what are some things that you have done? Because I hear this some from alums who, the outside of the library kind of looks the same, mm-hmm. but then they go on the inside and they're like, this doesn't look the same. And like, where are all the books?
Where are the books?
So what has changed, and what are some things that you've done to our library mm-hmm. on our campus to make that shift from being a warehouse for books mm-hmm. to a place where people go to learn, where students go to learn?
Again, partnerships. So with Pounding, we were able to analyze every book we had in the collection to find out if we were the only ones that owned that book, which obviously is rare, and you want to keep it.
Pounding essentially is
the private academic library network of Indiana.
Yeah.
24 libraries here in Indiana work very well together. Sharing collections, sharing staff, sharing resources.
Which means from a resource standpoint, if we have the book and all other 24 libraries have the book, it's kind of like, do we need that? Or, right. If we have the book and they need the book, we can give it to them.
Yeah. And we've got a system set up so that pops up immediately. And I don't want to say that everybody else races to the shelf to send it to us because we need it. But, we have maybe 2 copies, and there's a commitment, a collaboration that we will supply that library or that book to that other library fast. And we have a delivery service that cares for that. So we were able to go through the collection and say, you know what, we don't need all these books. I know that sounds really harsh, especially to people, bibliophiles, we want to keep those books. But just like your garden, you need to go through and pull out the weeds so the flowers and the vegetables can thrive. So we wanted to showcase the really important stuff that Grace was known for and Grace needed to have for what we teach here. And then the other things we could let go. And so that allowed us to have some space. We worked with a office supply company. We had a couple of them come in, and I said, I don't have a lot of money, but I need a vision. I'm not visionary, but I know that that kind of thing is important. So give us a vision of what we could do if I spent just $5,000 a year over a period of 5 years. What could we do with this space to make it more for the learner and less for the book? And one gal came back from she lives in South Bend, and she worked for a company that we've worked with here on campus. And it was a wonderful vision. She gave us several options. And I was like, we could do this, and we could take our own furniture and our own resources and make it more open and available for our students to learn and collaborate with and have some synergy there on campus, which we really did last night, but we won't go there right now. And so we weeded the collection. We were able to buy some compact shelving, and we moved all of the bound periodicals that we needed to keep. And we needed to keep bound periodicals because nobody else had these resources, couldn't afford to make them all available online, and move those to the lower level. That was the summer that the elevator broke. And we had to move all of these books to the lower level. Fizz Plant built us a book slide. And we would slide the books down the slide, and the students put them on a cart, and then go put them on the.
Wow.
It was a fun summer. We had some hardworking students, and so that was the one summer we opened up on the main floor. Fizz Plant also took our end panels, the things that cover the ends of the shelves, and made them into tabletops or shelf tops, and cut down our shelves to be about 4 foot high. So there were several areas now that allow us to see right through to the beautiful windows in the building. But those used to be real tall shelves. Mm-hmm. They're now short. We took some of our tables that we had already and moved them around so that they are centered on a pole where there's electricity. Need more electricity. Can't have enough electricity in today's environment. And got some brightly colored furniture. Again, over a period of time. Mm-hmm. Also, close to that time, the campus decided to move the Learning Center into the library, a great synergy. So they are a part of us. That is disability services. That is academic support. So that's tutoring, academic fundamentals for college, the math lab, and the writing lab. And again, we go to the library to learn how to do things. And so we had all of those tutors, the research help in one place. Mm-hmm. So that allowed us to put some more tables up for all of that.
Well, let me ask you then, just as we kind of wrap up, and I know we could talk forever about the changes in the library, and we certainly encourage alums and others to come check it out. It's open to the public to be able to kind of see it, and I have not walked by, especially those big windows, and not seen students sitting there studying while they're looking out the windows. It has become a place where, and I think you even have set some records recently mm-hmm. for how many students have been in the library at one time mm-hmm. Because they study in groups, they study individually. It's and students this day, socializing and studying are commingled. Those mm-hmm. aren't separate things. So even, you allow water and coffee in the library, which that used to be a no-no mm-hmm. back in the day, but it's become a social place mm-hmm. and a learning place. Mm-hmm. So as we look into the future, we mentioned AI at the beginning. And so, this next mm-hmm. whatever it is going to be, generative AI, and how that's already impacting campuses, and what are you as a library and as someone who thinks about how we think and thinks about how we learn, what are you learning about AI? What do you think about AI? Even from a Christian perspective, what should be some of our thoughts around artificial intelligence?
Well, I say I'm still learning, right? There's so much to learn, and I feel like I'm getting behind every day because there are things that are happening. But I start learning. I learn from other people, and actually, I'm interested in studying the ethics of technology and the ethics of this artificial intelligence. And there's some people that are writing and speaking about this, so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about how AI can help us. AI, I think it was just yesterday, a president posted something in Christian Scholars Review about
Kevin Brown from Asbury.
Yes,
great article.
Yeah. Is AI is probably going to take over. We're going to let it take over. And I'm afraid of the I want to say the dumbing down, right? God made us as thinking human beings. He gave us the charge in the Garden of Eden to have dominion, right? So we need to use the God-given brains that we've been given to learn, to explore, to create, and then to use things in an appropriate way. Information literacy is about finding resources and then using them in an appropriate and legal and ethical way. That was in the late 70s. They came up with that, and it's been evolving. Then we have media literacy. How do we consume media? A lot of times students don't do research on advertising to children, right? But what about advertising to adults and advertising to different populations? Media literacy. How do we consume media? How much time do we spend on our screens? And now there's a gal, Amanda Wheatley, that I listened to yesterday, talking about artificial intelligence literacy. How do we consume, use appropriately in an ethical and legal manner? Do we even know when AI is working? We have our speakers, right, in our homes, and hey Google, play this, right? Hey Alexa, order me this. AI is already at work. We've got it in our things, but do we realize how we're using it and how others are using our data? Privacy is a big concern. Sometimes we're concerned early on about our kids' Social Security numbers getting out there. There's so much more that I'm going to say big tech, the big data that's being collected that knows about us even more than we know about ourselves. You've heard those stories where, I'm not going to go that far. You've been searching in Google, and all of a sudden, the next day, the next hour, you have advertisements for that same thing, right?
Or sometimes you even think it, and you're like, that's when it gets...
Or a conversation in your home, right? And it's like, so how much... So it does. It used to be mail would come because they would figure things out about your age, right? We're getting retirement stuff these days. But there are things that they use, the big data, use to then send to us. So are we smart enough? We are smart enough. We just have to engage. So I think there's a lot of opportunity with AI, but we have to be willing to experiment and learn about it rather than run from it.
And so not be scared, right?
Correct.
As believers, we believe the Lord is sovereign. He's sovereign over all things, including technology.
Yes.
And he has called us to be wise.
Yes.
So how do we use artificial intelligence, not run from it, in a wise, ethical, biblical manner? Right. And that is extremely complex. And so we're thankful for, those who have the job of helping us learn how to learn, filter information, access information, but in a way that is, biblical and ethical. So thank you for the way you and your team do that.
Thank you. It's fun. It is fun. And we have a wonderful team, and not been bored for a long time.
Well, thank you for sharing some about the library. If someone wanted to find out more about Morgan Library, what's the best way to do it?
Well, we have a website, surprise, surprise, www.grace.edu/library. It's that easy. And I say the website is our virtual library. There are a lot of things there that are not in the physical library. 3/4 of our book collection, at least, are ebooks. 99% of our journal articles are e-articles. So now visitors can't always access the things that we have licenses that you can't access as a non-Grace student or faculty member. But there's all sorts of other information. Our archives, we're putting more archives up there, information about us, who to contact, some pictures. Yeah. But you know what? Another way is to walk in. We love it. I love to give tours and meet people. Met some wonderful alumni that have come through just to check out the place, to check out Grace, because it's been a few years. And they have wonderful stories as well. And to hear their experiences. I hear stories about moving the library, the physical books from McLean down the wintry hill into the new library, stories of people that have worked there. And we have treasures in that building, the Billy Sunday collection. We have some scrolls. We have some rare books that people have collected through the years. And I give credit to all my predecessors because that has not been my gifting. But we have some wonderful treasures in the physical resources and in the people.
Good. Well, thank you so much for your work on our campus and the way you love students well by helping them learn well. So, and thank you to all of you for listening to the Grace Story podcast today. We would appreciate it if you would like, share, comment on this wherever you may find it. If you have any questions, you can send those to podcast@grace.edu. Thank you to Avery and Rick for their work producing this podcast. And we hope wherever you are, you have a great Grace story today.